Welcome dear students. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the most famous tragedies of the modern history, which occurred 108 years ago. And the tragedy was the sinking of a ship. Here is the ship, which was considered the unsinkable ship. Unsinkable ship means the ship which can never sink. And the shocking thing is that the unsinkable ship sank in its very first journey into the ocean. And do you know, it was the largest and the most luxurious passenger ship of the world in its era. It has all the facilities and it was very comfortable for the passengers. Not only this, it was also considered the largest man-made moving object on the earth. Now, the questions are arising. How the comfortable journey of the ship turned into the tragic journey? Why the very first journey of the ship became its last journey? To find out the answers of these questions, let's start reading of the lesson 10 of our literature book. And the name of the lesson is The Unsinkable Ship. Dear students, before I start reading, I request you all to open page number 104 of your reader book. And don't forget to keep a pencil with you to underline the new words. So, the first para is, on 10th April 1912, the largest luxury ship in the world set sail from Southampton in England to New York. She was called the Titanic. The word Titanic means huge. This was her maiden voyage, that is, her first voyage. She set out to cross the Atlantic Ocean and she carried more than 2,000 passengers. The Titanic was like a floating town. The new words of this paragraph are luxury ship, voyage and set out. Voyage. Voyage means a long journey by sea. Next is set out. Set out means start doing something with clear goal. After that, the next word is luxury ship. A luxury ship is one that is very comfortable for travelers and also cost them a lot of money. A luxury ship has all kinds of facilities like shops, swimming pools, hotels and hospitals also. So, it was the day of 10th April 1912, a remarkable day in the history because it was the day when the largest and the most luxurious ship has started its first journey from Southampton to New York across the Atlantic Ocean. And do you know, it was its maiden voyage, means first voyage. And in its very first voyage, it carried more than 2,000 passengers. Now, it's time to tell you the name of the ship, and that is Titanic. The word Titanic means huge, large, big. The Titanic was very large, like a floating town. Do you want to know more about the Titanic? Let's have the next para. Here the next para is, everyone called the Titanic the finest ship in the world. Everyone was proud of her. She was as tall as a building with 15 stories. Inside, she was like a large hotel with grand staircases, dining rooms, shops and swimming pools. The new words of this para are stories and grand. The next word is stories. Stories means floors or levels. Here on the screen you can see a building with many floors like ground floor, first floor, second floors. These floors are called stories. As we know, the Titanic was the largest luxurious ship in the world. And it was as tall as a building with 15 stories. And from inside it was very attractive. It was like a large hotel with dining rooms, shops, swimming pools and grand staircases. So it was full of all kinds of facilities which the passengers could enjoy. This was the reason that everyone called the Titanic the finest ship in the world and everyone was proud of it. Now I would like to share one interesting fact about the Titanic, and that is one funnel of the Titanic was fake. Here on the screen you can see Titanic's 4 funnels. Among these, 3 funnels were functional, means they were actually connected to the furnaces that produced the smoke, and the 4th one was dummy. It was installed to make the ship look more beautiful. Now let's have the next para to know what else the passengers board on the Titanic were thinking about it. Here, everyone thought that the Titanic could never sink. They called her the unsinkable ship. The ship's builders were so sure of this that they put only a few lifeboats on the ship. This para has a new word, lifeboats. Lifeboats. Lifeboats are small boats carried on a ship to rescue passengers in case it starts sinking. So when there is an emergency on the ship, these lifeboats are used to save lives of the passengers. Here we know that Titanic was the most magnificent ship in the world. Everyone thought that the Titanic could never sink, and they called it the unsinkable ship. Even the builders of the ship were very sure that the Titanic is the unsinkable ship and it could never sink. And this was the reason they did not put lifeboats on the ship in sufficient number. Very few lifeboats were available on the Titanic when it was on its first voyage in Atlantic Ocean. Now let's have the next para. The journey was very comfortable. The passengers were proud because they were traveling in the best ship in the world. They felt safe. Here we know for the passengers the journey was very comfortable as they all were enjoying the facilities like swimming pool, shops, dining room, etc. It was the most luxurious ship and the people were proud because they were traveling in the best ship of the world. They were very happy and felt safe themselves as they were completely unaware of the danger which was near to them. Do you know what was the danger? Let's have the next para to know it. Here, then came the night of 14th April. The sky was clear and the sea was calm. Many of the passengers were asleep. Captain Smith knew that there were icebergs nearby. So he told a man to keep watch from the top of the ship. Suddenly, at 11:40 p.m., the man saw something. He grew cold with fear. A huge iceberg stood right in the path of the Titanic. Iceberg! He yelled. This paragraph has a new word, that is icebergs. Iceberg. Iceberg is a huge mass of ice floating in the sea in very cold regions. Here you can see the pieces of water ice are floating freely in the water. Sometimes these icebergs are very large. Here you can see an iceberg. Its very small part is above the ocean surface, which is visible, and the rest part is hidden, which is below the water. And this is very dangerous to the ship. And this hidden part is very dangerous to the ship. It can easily tear a hole in the bottom of the ship. So, have you understood how dangerous they are? Now let's go back to the para. So here we know that all the passengers were taking full enjoyment of their journey, and their journey was very comfortable, and they all were feeling safe themselves. But when it was the night of 14th April 1912, the sky was clear. It was full of stars, and the water of the sea was also calm. Many of the passengers were sleeping. No one knew about the danger which was very near to them. But there was a person on the ship who knew that there were some icebergs nearby. Do you know who was he? I tell you. He was Captain Edward Smith, the captain of the Titanic. The Titanic was under his command, and the captain was aware of the icebergs in the Atlantic Ocean. So he ordered a man to keep a watch from the top of the ship. When it was 11:40 p.m., just before midnight, the man saw something. He became cold with fear and started shivering to see that. What was that? Why he got scared this much? Because he saw an iceberg which was in the path of Titanic, and it was very near to it. And the Titanic was sailing at its full speed, and it was sailing right towards the iceberg. Feeling the danger, the man shouted, "Iceberg!" He immediately informed the captain and other crew members. What happened after that? To know this, let's have the next para. Here, the next para is Captain Smith fought hard to steer the Titanic away from the iceberg. But the ship changed direction slowly, and her side scraped the mountain of ice. A shower of ice fell onto the decks, and the iceberg cut holes along the ship's side. Water began to pour into the lower decks. Most passengers heard nothing and slept on. In this paragraph, we are having some new words like steer, scrapped, and decks. The first word is steer. Steer means make a ship or vehicle move in a particular direction. And for this, steering wheels are used in the vehicles. You might have seen these steering wheels in the car, bus, and other vehicles. After that, the next one is scrapped. Scrapped means rubbed against. Then decks. Decks means the floors of a ship. After knowing about the large iceberg in the path of the Titanic, Captain Smith tried hard to move the Titanic away from the iceberg. But it was too late. as the ship took time to change the direction. The Titanic was failed to divert its course from the iceberg and it rubbed against the iceberg. Here in this picture you can see how big iceberg is this. It's like a mountain of ice. As soon as the side of the Titanic rubbed against the iceberg cut holes along its side. And from these holes, water began to fill in the floor of the ship and in the lower compartments. Here you can see the lower compartments of the ship are filled with water. So here we know the water began to pour into the ship and the ship along with its passenger was in danger. But still most passengers were not aware of this danger as they were sleeping. Now let's have the next para to know what the Captain Smith did to save the Titanic and the passengers of Titanic. The next para is Captain Smith and his crew could not stop the water flooding through the ship. They knew that the Titanic was in great danger. The unsinkable ship was sinking. At 12:15 a.m., Captain Smith sent urgent messages on the ship's radio asking for help. Help! Titanic sinking! Come quickly! Then he ordered the crew to wake up all the passengers. This para has a new word, that is crew. Crew. Crew means a group of people who work on a ship or an aeroplane together. Here we know after hitting against the iceberg, the water filled in the ship with great speed. After flooding the lower compartments, the water raised up. Captain Smith and his crew tried hard, but they could not stop the water flooding in the ship. When the situation was completely out of control and the captain and his crew knew that the Titanic was in a great danger and it was sinking. The unsinkable ship was sinking. After knowing that the Titanic was sinking, in order to save the passengers, Captain Smith sent urgent messages on ship's radio for asking help, and he also ordered his crew members to wake up all the passengers of the Titanic. Now, here is a question. Did the Titanic get the help on time? To know this, let's have the next para. The next para is, a ship called the California was only 20 miles away, but she did not receive the Titanic's messages. Her radio was turned off and the radio operator was asleep. Another ship called the Carpathia heard the Titanic's calls and sailed at full speed towards her. Unfortunately, the Carpathia was far away and she took over 3 hours to reach the Titanic. So, when Captain Smith sent urgent messages for help, a ship named California was only 20 miles away from the Titanic. Since it was very close to the Titanic, even it did not receive the Titanic's messages because the ship's radio was turned off and the radio operator already had gone to sleep. This was the reason, even being so close, the California did not reach to help the Titanic. But another ship named Carpathia received the radio messages of the Titanic and it sailed towards it at full speed. Since Carpathia was very far away from Titanic, That's why it took so long to reach there. It took over 3 hours to reach the Titanic, and unfortunately, the Titanic did not get the help of Carpathia on time. Here you can see the diagram showing location and distance from the Titanic of other ships on night of disaster, means on the night of 14th April 1912. Here on the screen you can see, here is the Titanic and here is California, which was very near to it. But due to being unaware of the radio messages, it could not help Titanic. And here is Carpathia, which was very far away from the Titanic. That's why it arrived very late after the sinking of the Titanic. Now just think, if the Titanic had received the help on time, what would have happened? Definitely, many of the passengers of the Titanic could have saved. Now let's have the next para to know what the Captain Smith did to save the passengers of the Titanic. Here the next para is, meanwhile the Titanic was sinking rapidly. The crew lowered the lifeboats into the sea, but there was only enough space in the boats for a few hundred passengers. The Titanic had more than 2,000 people on board. The ship began to tilt into the sea. People began to jump from the decks into the ice-cold water. Here, during the time, the Titanic was getting flooded and it was sinking rapidly. All the passengers were very frightened. The passengers of the lower compartments rushed to the upper ones as the lower compartments were flooded. To save the lives of the passengers, the captain ordered his crew to lower the lifeboats into the sea. As there were more than 2,000 people on the ship and the lifeboats were very less in number, only a few hundred passengers could be saved. That's why the Captain Smith ordered his crew to send women and children first in the lifeboats. Here, due to continuously flooding of water into the ship began to tilt into the sea. Here on the screen you can see the one end of the ship is raised up due to flooding of water. As soon as the ship tilted into the sea, the people began to slide down into the ice-cold water. Here on the screen you can see the people are sliding down into the sea due to the tilting of the ship. What happened after that? Did any another ship arrive there to rescue the passengers of the Titanic? Did the unsinkable ship really sink in the Atlantic Ocean forever? Dear students, you have to find out the answers of these questions because these questions are your homework. Now it's time to give the end to this video. I will be present in the next video with the second part of the lesson. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.